Well, thanks, everyone. I am Jason Grimet. I'm the president of the Bipartisan Policy Center, and it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to host this dialogue today. As everybody knows, there is just tremendous activity around the climate debate right now. Some optimism that as the healthcare discussion that has dominated these halls moves towards resolution, there will be opportunities to, I think, further the discussion of a number of issues, and clearly climate change is high on that list. Just want to say a word about the Bipartisan Policy Center and what we're hoping to accomplish here today. The organization was founded a few years ago by former Senate Majority Leaders Tom Daschle, Bob Dole, George Mitchell, and Howard Baker. And the basic idea is to try to the small extent we can to provide both the motivation and the infrastructure for what I call the dark art of principled compromise, an idea that has at many times in this institution's past really brought forth the best and most resonant, lasting policy changes in the country. And we really try to do that principally by promoting real dialogues. What we find in Washington is that there's a tremendous amount of toxic disagreement and quite a bit of kind of strange bedfellows, let's hold hands and roll out what we've already agreed to together, and a shocking lack of principled, constructive discussion where there's both agreement and disagreement alike. And that's really the tone and theme that we hope to bring to this entire discussion. I can say with some confidence that there are some very deep core shared values and agreements. I think without question the panelists here today all share the view that climate change is a critical challenge and that we have to take meaningful, aggressive action that includes putting a price on carbon. And I would hazard to guess that the vast majority of you in the audience feel the same way. But the details matter. And there are significant and important debates underway, and our hope is to contribute to that discussion. One of the most important contributions to the debate, in recent memory, was the introduction of the CLEAR Act, when Senators Cantwell and Collins on December 11th brought forth a bipartisan piece of legislation that was both detailed and brief, which I think was appreciated by many, and tried to address a couple of the core themes that have really dominated the debate since the House action, the question of anxieties over how the markets would perform and opportunities to bring clarity and transparency to market oversight, and also questions about how the allocation system functions and the nuances and complexities there as well. And while I think there's been considerable and quite positive attention in the editorial pages and the big picture, I think there's actually been a real surprising lack of public detailed discussion about how that bill would operate, and really even more importantly, how the themes that Senators Cantwell and Collins have called forth play into ultimate legislation. I am very confident that some of the biggest ideas in the CLEAR Act are going to become significant aspects of whatever eventually does move through the Senate. I know that all of the members are working together, and in addition to the obvious leadership that Senators Kerry, Graham, and Lieberman are bringing forward, important discussions underway still in the Energy Committee. Senator Lugar has indicated that he's moving forward with a big piece of energy legislation. So there's a foment of activity. And we're really happy to be able to contribute to that discussion. And so to kick off today, we have the great pleasure of having both Senators Cantwell and Collins able to offer some just kind of overview remarks. We're then going to move into a panel discussion, and there is certainly as much expertise, in the room as there will be on the panel on a lot of these issues. So, my hope is to really open it up quickly, have questions, welcome constructive statements, ask people to make 1 point per intervention. That tends to keep things flowing a little bit, and see where we get. We got about an hour and a half, and look forward to a really good discussion. So, Senator Cantwell, really great to have you here, and the mic is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you very much for the Bipartisan Policy Center for hosting this event, and for all of you for attending to have an open discussion about policies moving forward on a transition of energy policy that is so critical for our nation. I know my colleague Senator Snowe was on the floor, so I'm sure she'll be here shortly and will be able to give remarks as well, but I think I'll just go ahead and jump in her absence. And first of all, thank her for her efforts in joining on a bill to have both a Democrat and Republican signed on to a piece of legislation to promote such a important policy for us at this point in time in our nation. I think is critically important. In the state of Washington, we kind of expect that. Many of you may have known our Governor Dan Evans, who was a three-term Republican governor, or Booth Gardner, who served 2 terms. When it came to environmental policy for Washington State, there really wasn't much difference between them. Now our Governor Christine Gregoire and Bill Ruckelshaus are fighting very much to protect our wild salmon, and you probably can't see a bit of difference between them as it relates to this policy. So when it comes to this, how we transition to a new energy future, I don't think that is a Democrat or Republican issue. I think that it is an issue for the future of our country and the well-being of our citizens. And I think that Senator Collins recognized that and was happy to sign on to this legislation. And we have been working with many of our colleagues, including Senators Graham and Kerry and Lieberman, to talk about the basics of this bill and why we think it's so important as a structure and a framework. For me, while I'm a mountain climber and love the outdoors, and if preferred, would spend my time doing that, the issue for me in this legislation is really about the economic opportunity of a new energy future. Energy for tomorrow is a $6 trillion market opportunity. The internet, by comparison, is only $2 trillion. So the products and services and the opportunities for the United States to be a global leader in new energy solutions is one of the biggest economic opportunities, not only of this generation, but of any generation to capitalize on. And it's only by putting a predictable price signal on carbon that we will be able to achieve that transition. Many of you I may worked with, along with Senator Ensign, on another bipartisan effort on production tax credits and investment tax credits. And while we were happy to get those tax credits and will fight for their continued extension, those kinds of policies by the federal government can only have a limited impact on actually sending the market signals that we need to send to actually make this transition. I equate it to what happened in software when we used to have a mainframe computer and had to write code to communicate with it, and then all of a sudden something changed and we could have a distributed network with a computer on every desk and look at all the applications and all of the job production that has happened since then. Well, it's the same with energy. Instead of energy being in one single place and having a pipeline going thousands and thousands of miles, energy can be distributed, and it can be from lots of different sources. And the efficiency of energy in and of itself can create millions of new jobs, and it is an opportunity for us to capitalize on that. So that is why what is so important about the CLEAR Act is its predictability. I am not a fan of a large trading element to a policy on putting a market signal on carbon. The reason is because the volatility that you get with trading that can be witnessed by $150 a barrel oil prices that had nothing to do with reality, or the carbon markets as they were established for carbon futures in Europe, where one newspaper admitted that almost 95% of the market on carbon futures could be manipulated. We will not get to predictability with having trading and the volatility that comes with trading. So the first premise of this bill is a simple auction at the very high end of the stream, and to have those permits be the basis for allowing us to move off of carbon. Beginning in 2012, the President would set a target without disrupting the U.S. economy. And what I also like about this legislation is that the formula for reduction is a gradual increase, carbon capped, and increase by 0.25% every year. We have heard from many businesses that this allows for a much more predictable future for the price and a signal that the market can understand. And we've heard from many who say that this will unleash the investment that we need in green technology that is much more effective than any tax credits we could be giving here in Washington, D.C. Secondly, the attractiveness of allowing for a rebate back to consumers. It's very important, and we think the CLEAR Act is the first time that someone has articulated the rebate to consumers in a way that has gotten the support of organizations like AARP, who will be on the second panel here, to talk about why that is so important to the consumer in the process. And today, there is also a report being released called Clear Economics by Mr. Boyce and Mr. Riddle that will talk about how incomes of low-income and middle-income households will have no negative impact and will actually have a positive impact on the amount of money that they will getting back, so that they will actually be getting an energy rebate. We think this is very important to consumers, and we think that this report details exactly how that rebate will work and how positive it is. I also want to mention that CBO will score the CLEAR Act as revenue neutral so that our bill will not add to the budget deficit, which could harm consumers in so many ways. So I am just glad to be here today with my colleague, Senator Collins, and to hear some of the panel discussion today, although we may have to step out for part of it and meet with constituents. But I know that your discussion will be lively and we'll get to hear every element as we'll have a taped copy of it. But that this is about a predictable future. It is about not a bunch of allowances or giveaways, but about a transparent process that will allow policymakers here to help us make these decisions in the future, and a bill that doesn't create a multi-trillion-dollar new carbon market that is just many ways for others to get rich and not a way for the American economy to move forward in a healthy job growth creation of green energy technology. So again, Jason, thank you very much for the Bipartisan Policy Center for inviting us here for these remarks, and we look forward to the discussion. And I'm going to turn it back over to you in the true bipartisan sense so you can introduce my colleague.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. And the energy and the ideas that you're bringing to this debate are really tremendously appreciated. And as a profile and courage, Senator Collins, we are thrilled to have you here today. I think that as the Bipartisan Policy Center, we are extremely appreciative of all the work that you've been doing, not just this year, but over the many years on energy and environmental protection, and would love to hear a few remarks.
Thank you. Do you remember the old expression that if you want something done, go to a woman? Well, that's what we see here. I'm very pleased to join Senator Cantwell in introducing the only bipartisan clean energy bill that's actually been introduced. There are others that have been rumored for a long time, negotiated for many months, but this is one that has actually been introduced. I want to thank you all for coming today. I was saying to my staff, I came from the floor, that the last time we had scheduled this briefing, there was a colossal snowstorm. This time, we're expected to be in session all night, so it's something about this briefing that brings on unusual circumstances. But I'm very grateful to the Bipartisan Policy Center for organizing such an impressive group of speakers to talk to you about clean energy legislation. Amy Carroll of my staff, who is right over there and is a scientist, we don't have that many of those on Capitol Hill, will be staying throughout and reporting back to me. My reason for getting involved in this issue is that I believe we must position the United States to be a leader in renewable energy and energy conservation technologies. We must reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and we must advance the goal of energy independence for our nation. We are at risk of losing the race to develop alternative energy and new technologies to China. And I don't want to see that happen. I want our country to be the leader in developing these technologies, these alternative sources of energy. And if we do not act quickly, we are going to lose that race to China. And by losing that race, we will lose the opportunity to create thousands, tens of thousands of green energy jobs that are much needed in this country. I like the approach of the CLEAR bill because it protects consumers that could be hit with higher energy prices. I represent a state that is heavily dependent on fossil fuels and will be for many years to come as we make that transition, and that is also a low-income state. the part of our CLEAR Act rebating 75% of the revenues to consumers is extremely attractive to me, and I believe would help reassure the American public that we can accomplish the goal of putting a price on carbon without bankrupting families that are struggling to afford energy even today. I like the predictability of our approach. The price collar sends a strong signal to the business community that there will be predictability so that they can plan their investments to create more jobs. Clean energy legislation should encourage the adoption of energy efficiency measures and further the development of renewable energy. We do that as well. 25% of the revenues would be dedicated to promoting research and development, mitigating impacts, and I think that is a better way to do it than some of the other models. And as Senator Cantwell mentioned, I also very much support the approach of being careful not to create a huge new carbon market that would be susceptible to speculation and manipulation. By having the upstream cap on carbon and the trading occurring only among the producers of fossil fuels, you prevent those that are neither producers nor users from getting into the market and manipulating it. Financial experts, by contrast, estimate that under the House-passed bill, the cap-and-trade bill, that carbon permit trading could create a $3 trillion commodity market by the year 2020. I read one story that suggested that this would be very good for Wall Street because there would be hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. I think there's a better use for those hundreds of millions of dollars. The simplicity of our approach is also attractive. As I told the president, and I didn't mean this as a criticism of the health care bill, although he took it that way, I think that the public is tired of 2,000-plus page bills and wants a bill that is more straightforward in its approach. I very much appreciated the opportunity to work with my colleague from Washington in developing a bill that is straightforward, that's pro-consumer, and that I think would make a real difference in spurring the development of alternative energy. And again, I appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. Thank you.
I just want to again thank Senator Snowe for her support of this. I wanted to thank Senator Collins for her support of this legislation. Yes, we are talking to many colleagues, but Senator Collins did something in signing on to this legislation that really hasn't been done in the last year and a half, and that is for a Republican to sign up in advance on specific legislation to further cause here in the United States Senate. And when you think about all the debate that we've been having the last year or so on health care, to have somebody who is willing to put their name on a piece of legislation up front and stand with that is really somebody who wants to promote that policy for the betterment of this country. And so I just want to thank you for that. And I know that that probably causes some consternation in some circles. But I think it shows that Republicans are willing to put their name on bipartisan legislation. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you both.